What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today we're bringing forth a classic series of ours over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel, a series that you guys have really been clamoring at the bit for us to bring back these past few weeks. And with the conclusion of the 2021 fantasy football season, we had to hit you guys with the Dynasty decisions. We had to take on your guys' teams, help you guys turn, your bottom feeder rosters, your top end rosters into ultimate championship Dynasty real powerhouses, to be quite honest. But yeah, I'm excited. This is literally one of my favorite series to take on this channel, going in depth, putting us in really your mind in terms of how to fix your guys' rosters. But with that being said, Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I always enjoy these as well. It's fun talking about other people's rosters and also kind of making parallels. It helps us, with our own rosters as well.
Yeah.
Seeing what positions you guys are in, engaging player value around your leagues with some of the trade offers that you guys receive. So if you guys do want to be a part of Dynasty Decisions, again, you can reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, whatever, and send us your roster in Excel format or send us your trade or whatever, your Dynasty decision is, and we will, be happy to oblige you, put you on future episode of Dynasty Decisions. But if you do enjoy this video, as always, like button looks like this, helps us out, helps us grow. Comment any of your thoughts down below as well. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. But with that being said, let's hit the intro.
All right, to kick off this Dynasty Decisions post-regular season episode, we're going to start off with the Broncos updates team. And according to him, he sent the picture. He basically asked for some advice on his 10-team, one-quarterback PPR league. And I'm not going to read off the whole team. As you guys kind of know, we don't want to spend too much time reading off the roster. But you guys can see the graphic on the screen, basically headlined by Kyler, Swift, Chase, Goddard, and all of those picks. But he kind of wanted us to go over his teams, go over a potential trade offer that he actually received from a different manager, and overall, any other thoughts on how we can help him retool this team. So to start off, you guys can see the first trade on the screen that he made. So in a one quarterback league, as I mentioned, he sent away Josh Allen, Brandon Ayuk, a late 2022 first and a late 2022 second, and he ended up receiving back Kyler Murray, Michael Pittman, the 2022 203 and the 2022 301. So initial thoughts when looking at this deal. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's pretty tough because the non-draft pick assets in this trade are very, similar in value. I think with Kyler Murray and Josh Allen, they're both pretty easily recognized as top 5 Dynasty quarterbacks. Pittman and Ayuk are both, hopeful wide receiver 2s in Dynasty. And, there's some hope that they can ascend further. I think Pittman obviously made up some ground on Ayuk this year, whereas Ayuk coming into this season was viewed way higher than Pittman in his dynasty value. So again, depending on your opinions of either of these players, you could view any which way of this trade as, the way that he won. But I tend to believe that Ayuk is slightly ahead of Pittman still, and I tend to believe that Allen is slightly ahead of Kyler Murray still. And then on top of that, you also gave away the better draft capital with the late first round pick and the late second round as opposed to the 203 and the 301. So I personally probably would have preferred your side, the Josh Allen and Brandon Ayuk side.
Yeah, and I do agree with you on that premise. Again, you ask someone else, maybe they're higher on Kyler compared to Josh Allen, and they think that, Michael Pittman's going to be a long-term and 1,200-yard type potential receiver, maybe prefer him over Ayuk. But I do agree with you. Again, I do think Ayuk at his ceiling in terms of that outcome is going to be more valuable than Michael Pittman. But obviously with the security we saw this year, you'd probably say at worst, in my opinion, it's a wash. But with Josh Allen, with what he's able to do with his arm, with his legs, the long-term security that he has in Buffalo with that contract, he's already shown to be more durable than Kyler Murray in the NFL thus far. I just think he's a far safer quarterback option. Again, you can't hold too much gripe because I do think Kyler Murray, obviously, when he's on the field, is an elite fantasy quarterback. But Josh Allen, we're talking about the fantasy quarterback one for the past 2 years, and nothing about that situation should be changing for quite a while. So I do lean that Josh Allen side, but we could flip to the next deal that I do think you ended up winning here. And the majority of the viewers that have watched our content, basically, including yourself, obviously, have basically understood our thoughts on getting out of aging assets while they still have value. And this is a perfect example here. Being able to send Adam Thielen and in return getting Tim Patrick in a late 2022 first. If you were to make this deal now, like is Adam Thielen even worth a mid-second?
It all depends on the team, probably. But yeah, with Adam Thielen closing the season injured, again, we know that in terms of market value and the view of the market, when older players get injured, they tend to tumble down the rankings a little bit more than obviously a younger player or a younger receiver would if they got injured. So the fact that Thielen ended out the season with an injury definitely hurts his value. So hopefully, I'm assuming you made this trade when Thielen was at his best, when he was at the top of his game, and you were able to get a first round pick out of it. And again, we've seen in recent years what a late first round wide receiver can do, whether it was a T. Higgins, who was actually going in the second round in most cases, whether it was a Justin Jefferson a couple years ago. Like sometimes you can really hit big on these late first round receivers. Even this past year with guys like Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, and Rashad Bateman, I would still, obviously take some of those guys over Adam Thielen long term. So that's kind of the mind frame that you got to get in with some of these draft picks. You don't necessarily want to assign, that pick is, Chris Olave or, whatever wide receiver in this draft class that you think he's worth, because it is a liquid currency as well. And you can trade it away during the draft or just before the draft in peak rookie season and get a lot more than Adam Thielen for it.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Again, the current price gauge of Adam Thielen on Keep Trade Cut is about a late second rounder in Superflex drafts, about the 211 in Superflex. So you take in about 4 or 5 quarterbacks off that, you're still making profit in terms of his comparative value. So again, and you got a free Tim Patrick, obviously signed a long-term deal with the Broncos. Maybe you can be, a wide receiver for depth, bye-week fill-in piece for you for long-term. So absolutely a phenomenal deal you're able to do here in selling Adam Thielen. Next deal is very, very interesting. He ended up shopping what he says is going to be the 2022 pick 101 and a 2022 late first, which basically we can just swap as Adam Thielen in return for maybe the hottest name at running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football over this last, month, 6-week stretch. And man, I'll take Javonte Williams here. I love the class that's coming in, especially the wide receivers this year. But I do think that Javonte Williams has pretty much solidified himself as, at worst, a top 8 dynasty running back, and in my opinion, is not escaping my top 5.
Yeah, for sure. Because had Javonte Williams been in this draft class, he would have been the best running back in it. And not only that, but we have a sample size of him in the NFL where we saw him, break tackles at a high rate and be very efficient, handle a workload, get receiving work, be trusted by his coaching staff. So all that kind of plays into the fact that Javonte Williams to me is way more valuable than anybody in this draft class by a pretty decent margin, knowing that he's still very young as well. And that late first round pick, again, it's a valuable asset, but I'm still taking Javonte for the 101 plus the late first that you gave up as well, which again, like you mentioned, basically is Adam Thielen because that's how you got it.
Yep, fully agree. So we'll speed through these last 2 deals he made, talk about the deal he's got offered, and maybe any closing thoughts we have on his team. So last 2 deals, again, we'll kind of just talk in conjunction here. Mike Williams for Tyler Lockett. I personally would prefer the Mike Williams side simply due to age, simply due to the fact that at their ceiling, they're probably, fringe top 15 type of wide receivers. And we've kind of seen the volatility play itself out in Seattle. And of course, we know with Russell Wilson, there's not even a certainty he's back in Seattle. So you're getting younger with Mike Williams. I would prefer that side, but obviously that's the side you gave up. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, again, I think a couple factors lead me to say Mike Williams is probably the better option. Like you said, age, also contract situation. Again, we don't know if he's going to be back in Los Angeles, but by all accounts, it sounds like he wants to be. And if he is back in Los Angeles, then he's tied to Justin Herbert for the foreseeable future, 3-4 years, however the length of the contract that he signs. And if he's not, maybe he signs a big money deal elsewhere and you can maybe sell him at that point or whatever the case is. So yeah, over, a 28, 20, I don't know exactly how old Tyler Lockett is. He's probably 28, 29 years old. I'll take the, the couple year age discrepancy with him and Mike Williams. And honestly, Mike Williams was the better player this year. It wasn't even just like a win now versus like a rebuilding situation. Is this year, Mike Williams was more valuable for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about he played in 16 games this year. He obviously missed a game in that time frame, but in the 16 games he played this year, we could basically use that as a sample size for exactly what a typical season would look like. Because again, we're used to 16 games. Obviously, the 17th game got added, but in the 16 games he played this year, regardless, was still able to garner 129 targets, put up nearly 1,200 yards, and almost had double-digit touchdowns. He had 9 touchdowns on the season, and I mean, that's basically what we're getting out of Tyler Lockett anyways, only you're getting younger by turning it into Mike Williams. Yeah, like I think that's a pretty easy choice for me personally. And then finally, again, this is a huge dub of a deal, but he gave away Travis Kelce and Robbie Anderson, and he ended up receiving Brandon Ayuk, Dallas Goedert, and the 105. And I, like, That was a phenomenal deal. Like that is absolutely fleecing the other guy here. I think Kelsey is obviously a great asset in his own right, but even if you were to equate Travis Kelsey's value to Ayuk and Goddard, which I would actually prefer the Goddard and Ayuk side, you basically gave Robbie Anderson and got the pick 105 for it if you were to do that.
Yeah, I don't have any further comments. You fleeced him.
Like, yeah, and then finally, again, the deal that he was contemplating making, a deal that he got offered. If this deal is still on the table, Broncos update, go take it with make sure he doesn't second guess himself. Make sure he doesn't take it off the table because basically you would send away Nick Chubb for a 2023 first that's projected to possibly be early and a 2023 first that's projected to be late. 2 2023 firsts for, again, a soon to be 26-year-old running back that has, again, you guys are going to see obviously the fantasy lessons learned video, has over 1,000 career touches. And you could basically turn that into a chance of, Bijan Robinson, Tank Bigsby, Blake Corum, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kayshon Boutte, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Not to mention you get another first on top of that. You have 2 chances at any one of those crop of players. Like, this is an instant smash.
Yeah, especially considering your team is, even without Nick Chubb, like even if you make this trade, your team is kind of like house money. And we can kind of transition to this into the final thoughts on the team. Is your team is good enough to probably compete next year, even without Nick Chubb? It's just like a house money type of season because you have DeAndre Swift and Jamar Chase, Javonte Williams, a lot of young pieces that even if you don't win next year, you're going to be fine going into the future. So if you want to compete next year, you can. You have a good enough team to do so. But even with that, it's not like you're hamstrung into keeping Nick Chubb because you need him in order to compete because he's like your RB2 or something like that. Because I think he's your RB3 on your roster. And definitely. Again, the other running backs that you have like 3-4 years of age and touches under their belt relative to what Nick Chubb has right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quickly going to say before we go on to the next team, like even if you got rid of a Nick Chubb, like again, Melvin Gordon's an unsexy running back, but he's probably going to sign as a 1B somewhere on a relatively decent contract and maybe give you a RB3 type of value with which when you have DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams, you really only need, a flex piece bye-week fill-in type of running back behind him regardless. And obviously, again, we know with the concerns, the volatility of CMC, maybe he gets hurt again. Chuba Hubbard proved to be, a top 24-ish type of back when he was out. So overall, again, I don't mind your situation at running back even without Nick Chubb. And then again, it's going to be completely restored in 2023 if you have a chance at one of those stud running backs in that class.
Yep, for sure. So let's move on to Hudson's team. Again, we spent a little bit too much time on Broncos team, but he did have a lot of trades that we went over, and we like talking trades, of course. So
of course.
Don't mind it there. But we got a 12-team, 1 quarterback PPR league for Hudson. Again, you guys should see his team on the screen. He does have no first-round pick this year, but he has 2 seconds and then 2 firsts and 2 seconds in 2023. He said he was the 7 seed this season, and he barely missed the playoffs. Now, I don't understand how you didn't make the playoffs with this team. I guess some of the
Gibson
injuries
was banged up.
Yeah, Gibson, AJ Brown, some of the down play.
Had a bad stretch down the stretch. So I mean, I could see like maybe why you barely missed, but you asked where you should go from here. You set your lineup next year. That's where you go from here because even if you don't win in 22, which I do think you're going to be a top contender in 2022, obviously with Pat Freiermuth maybe emerging, maybe with a better quarterback in town in Pittsburgh. All those fucking, like you have 4 top 10 dynasty wide receivers and a couple other ones with upside, in my opinion, with Claypool and Bateman. Those running backs, again, we love Javonte. We love Gibson. Akers obviously has crazy potential when he comes back and you got the best quarterback in the fucking league. Like you set your lineup here. And even if you don't win in 2022, you have 2 2023 firsts on top of this roster. Unbelievable.
And 2 seconds.
Yeah, like unbelievable. Like you should be fine for a while here. There's not even maybe you want to flip Damian Harris and get some, depth in terms of picks, but even that's like nitpicking this roster. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't think there's a whole lot you could do. Like maybe you want to go after like one more elite playmaker like on your team and try and secure like Jonathan Taylor. Maybe like if you want to take Gibson and like one of your second rounders this year and like another piece, go after a Jonathan Taylor to really, really make this roster as elite as it can be at the top. But again, another nitpicky kind of suggestion because like Danny said, you can pretty much just set your lineup next year and you'll be in great shape. So apologies, Hudson. We'd love to spend more time on your team, but quite frankly, I don't know if you need our help.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a phenomenal job, and I think I remember last year he was in his rookie draft, and he shared, he's like, "Damn, like my league's like taking running backs. Should I take Jamar Chase at the 105, or should I get another running back or like Trey Sermon?" I'm like, dude, like just take the elite talent and figure it out later. And again, now you see that wide receiver core. Chase is arguably developed into the one, and you have that like team, like you are set. You know what you're doing. Let's get on to the next team too, though. That's going to be from Brock, obviously an OG of the channel, a member of the channel, 10-team Superflex PPR league. And he thought he was a 2022 contender. This was a draft taken mid-season because he had Lance and ETN. But I guess he said he had a hot start, and so he traded for CMC and MT to contend. But he got third place. So what are your initial thoughts here on the roster? And his main question he has is, should I trade Eckler at his peak value considering his age, or should I just go and run him back with this team?
My initial thoughts are probably to run it back with this team. Obviously, it's a super flex. You have Mahomes, who's, a solidified, best quarterback in Dynasty. You have Lance, who should be the starting quarterback next year. Derek Carr and Davis Mills, good quarterback depth as well in case of injury or whatever. And then your running back core with your top three, CMC, Swift, Eckler. Obviously, you said, should I trade Eckler? I would definitely gauge what his value is and see what the value of some younger replacements are, because if you can go after a J.K. Dobbins, who's obviously coming off of an injury, a Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, like somebody like that, and see what they're willing to give up with Eckler involved in that trade. Because I know we always talk about Javonte Williams' value being a top 5 dynasty running back, but maybe you play in a dynasty league with more redraft players, right? Maybe they don't understand the positional value and the long-term value of a guy like Javonte Williams. So you might be able to get a guy like Javonte Williams straight up for a guy like Austin Eckler, or get Antonio Gibson straight up for Austin Eckler. And I personally would prefer both guys in a straight up situation, even though Eckler,
you can definitely get Gibson
might outperform them the next couple of years. But again, I think you can make the argument that Javonte Williams and Antonio Gibson might be better than Eckler next year in fantasy. And they're 4 years younger than him.
No, I fully agree. Again, I love Eckler, the player, and I'm still going to be in on redraft. But realistically, he's going to be turning 27 this year going into the season. And again, you mentioned Gibson trade. I think you probably even get Gibson plus, because again, people are going to have a lot of recency bias. They're going to see this guy was the RB2 for the majority of this past season. Nothing's really changing with that Chargers offense. And I will always say this: if I have an opportunity to sell an old running back at his peak value and end up quote unquote downgrading to a young running back plus depth pieces, like I'm doing that every single time. Because again, the recent years we've basically seen it. Like Zeke Elliott a couple years ago was at his peak value. You probably could have gotten DeAndre Swift plus for him. Going into this year, I mean, realistically, you could have gotten Javonte Williams plus if you gave up Dalvin Cook. Like there's so many of these, older peak running backs that you can sell in their prime, get a younger, worse asset, if you will, and depth. And by the year after, that worse asset just so ends up being the better running back pick anyways.
Yeah, it's weird how quickly running back production flips on its head too, right? You might pick, like coming into the season, like you said, Javonte Williams and Dalvin Cook. You might have been like, well, Dalvin Cook's can outproduce him for 2 years, 3 years or whatever. And, then Javonte is going to be better. But like, I'm going to be shocked if Javonte Williams could outproduce him next year. Like that's one season that you got a Dalvin Cook for the, the extra touch workload and, a couple of years of age on top of it. So
you got the RB10 point per game PPR season from Dalvin Cook, and then Javonte Williams worth more than him. Like, cool. Like, yeah, like nice. You know what I mean? Like,
it's definitely a little bit overrated, I would say, when you go from an old running back to a young running back. Whoever got the old running back's like, well, I'm going to, get the better immediate value. But the curve for running back production is pretty steep and quick.
And the only time I'm willing to quote unquote upgrade from a young running back to a older running back is only when I'm in the middle of the season, is only when I'm a complete contender. And I'm seeing, like, for example, this year I ended up turning Gibson in a piece into Eckler and Mike Williams. Like that's the type of move like you where I would actually acquire an older running back. But at this current point, when I can accumulate value and I can attack my rookie draft and I can make trades entering the season while not really knowing the context and feel of the league, absolutely go for that younger piece. But either way, again, you have a good head on your shoulders. You know what you're doing. A member of the channel. We basically interact with us a good amount. So Brock's been following FSE for a while, and as a result, you can see what he ended up doing with his team as well.
Yep, for sure. So let's move on to Tano's team. 12 team, 1 quarterback, PPR. This is what I like to call a blank slate. And I love talking about stuff like this.
So much fun.
because it is really a best player available situation, right? And we see this in the real NFL too, right? We're seeing with the Detroit Lions and the Texans, like these teams they're blank slate rosters. They have a couple, young pieces, but for the most part, they're just taking best player available in their rookie drafts, which is what you're going to be doing too. You have the 101, the 102, the 103. So you have the top 3 picks in this year's draft. You also have the 202, an early second rounder, and then you have 5 first rounders, potentially 2 of them early is what he has listed here in 2023. And then he also has 2 2024 first rounders as well. So what you're looking at is a situation where you have to force nothing, right? You have Joe Burrow in a 1 quarterback league. He is a good enough dynasty quarterback that I'm honestly fine. And you also have like Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, like don't even address the quarterback position, period. Probably like you really don't have to do anything. So at that point, you're just looking for wide receivers, elite wide receiver talents, which you're definitely going to get with the 101, 102, and 103 this year, because most likely that's going to be Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, and wide receiver 3, Drake London or whatever, or you want to, mix in a running back like Spiller or Hall with one of those picks. And after those 5 first round picks, that's probably when you're building out your running back core with Gibbs and with Bijan and with Bigsby and that class that's coming in, because we know, at least for the time being, that class is expected to be better at the running back position.
Yeah, I mean, like realistically, like a lot of people are viewing this team right now, like, oh my God, like that roster itself, that's so ugly. But say you start off with 101, 102, 103 this year, right? You turn that into Burks, Wilson, and Drake London. So you already basically have your wide receiver core set with Ayuk, Burks, Wilson, London for the long term. You have the 202, so, maybe you get a falling volume, like maybe a Mechie, somebody scared about his knee, you're able to take him there. So be it. So you get something like that in the 202. Then you go into next year, and you say, okay, you know what? With this draft class, with these picks, I can make a contender in a year. And you take, Bijan Robinson, Tank Bigsby, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and, maybe with one of the seconds, or if one of the first is late, you get like a Michael Mayer, and suddenly this team is the best in your league.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think you have some flexibility to move some picks for some players if you want, but I'm okay just completely rebuilding this one through the draft.
Yep.
And if you're going to acquire players, I would highly suggest acquiring wide receivers and tight ends and probably not running backs, because your winning window is probably going to start in the 2023 season after your 2023 rookie class is on your roster. And let's say you go into the season and your starting lineup is, Burrow, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you have like, Ayuk, Burks, and all those guys. And, let's say 2 of them have become like superstars already in their rookie seasons. And then at tight end, maybe you made a move for a tight end, and that's what your team's looking like. And then again, you still have 2 2024 first round picks and 2 2024 seconds too. So you can continue to just keep building this thing.
I got one question for you here. Would you be considering, any of one of those top 3 picks you have this year plus Ayuk and going after Pitts?
Yeah, Pitts is the one guy that I'd be definitely considering going after, just because he does play tight end. So we got to expect that his career peak is probably going to be later than, most rebuilding assets from this draft class, because Jamar Chase is already like in his peak production, right? With Kyle Pitts, I'm expecting his best years to probably be towards the latter half of his rookie contract. And at that point, that's like aligned with your winning window, which is something we talk about all the time. So if you wanted to take the 103, and I don't even know if you would need to do the 103 and Ayuk, you might be able to get away with like the 103 and Kirk for Kyle Pitts. It all really depends on what the Kyle Pitts owner views him as, but I'm okay definitely going after a guy like Kyle Pitts with the roster construction that he has, because like I know Michael Mayer is expected to be a very good tight end prospect. I don't know if you're going to see.
He's not Kyle Pitts.
I don't think he's going to be Kyle Pitts. Yeah,
like the only one that's like even in the conversation. Like I don't even think you can make him in the conversation yet. But based solely off of true freshman projection, like Brock Bowers is the only real like tight end prospect that you can plausibly make a case for in 2024 that he could potentially enter that stratosphere. Because again, I'm not sure if you rock Brock Bowers this year, but he was fucking amazing for Georgia. But either way, like, saying that any prospect, even in the next 5 years, is going to even be remotely close to Pitts is a stretch, because that's the type of unicorn we're dealing with here. I mean, everybody's, going to hate on him because he only had obviously 1 touchdown, but man, like the dude had 1,000 yards as a freaking rookie. That's all we have to say. So either way, in terms of these trades, there's not really much I would do here. I just hold pat with this roster and hold the picks and really make this a 2024 dominant team.
Yeah, he does have 2 offers on the table we can quickly touch on. He has an offer. Again, he doesn't say exactly which side he'd be getting. I'm just looking at his roster if he has any of these players. I think he'd be getting this side which is Rashad Penny, and the 309 for the 202, which he does have the 202. So would you acquire Rashad Penny in the 309? I personally would not, because he's a running back. He's already at the end of his rookie contract, and he doesn't align with your winning window. So again, is Rashad Penny a bad guy to go out and acquire in Dynasty? I mean, depends what his cost is. I think if you're a contender or a team that is looking to make a push next year, I don't think this is a horrible price to give up for Rashad Penny. But given the construction of your team, I don't think this is a trade I would make.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll quickly say with Rashad Penny is making a bet like that is betting on the production outweighing the cost. Because let's be honest here, even if Penny has a really good season next year, like, how much more can his cost really go up? How much more can his value really go up? Like, you're making a case that you're betting on a marginal potential gain in value with Rashad Penny. And it's way more likely that by this time next year, he's a 27-year-old running back who hasn't lived up to the hype and is finishing out his rookie contract.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, there's so much risk there. Again, obviously, if you're a contender, you're more willing to take that risk because, again, if he does hit, we saw him be a super efficient player down the stretch here. But in your position, like, you're not competing anytime soon. You want to inherently make sure that your picks are as valuable as possible regardless. You want to make sure you get the 101. And Rashad Penny is just, adding points to your team for no reason. So I would decline that. And that basically goes into my thing with MT. Again, do I think MT is worth a first? Absolutely. You are a middling team. You are a contending team. And you think you could either use MT in his production this year, or you could maybe flip him for value at midseason. Sure, I don't mind making that move whatsoever because I think MT is one of the best contending buy lows in fantasy football. But in your position, like, you're given a first. You're assuming that it's going to be mid to late. Even if MT returns to his value, his pick value goes from what? The 110 to the 104 for you, and also ruins your own pick because he's going to be producing. Like, I just wouldn't do that bet.
Yeah, no, I agree. And not only that, but I mean, like, this is an outside chance of happening. I don't want to say this is like a lock that this would happen, but Michael Thomas has also been kind of like a head case off the field too. So there's also a chance that his value declines from that perspective too. And if you are buying Michael Thomas in this case because you think a late first is a good price to pay for him, and your intention is to flip him at some point during the season once he's back on the field, everybody remembers who Michael Thomas is. You're just acquiring way too much risk at that point, especially because people are knowing that you're going to be a motivated seller because you're not competing. So you're not going to just get full, value for Michael Thomas to begin with. And then you also are, incurring a lot of risk with that trade as well. So Again, if you are a contending team, if you finish 6th in your league this year and you need something to put you over the top for next year, I'm okay with this trade, but I probably wouldn't do this as a full-fledged, blank slate rebuild.
Yeah. Or like if you had like a quick fix rebuild where you can maybe semi-contend in 2022, I'd be more fine doing it. Heck, I did that type of move in our listener dynasty league where I acquired MT, but in this type of situation, blank slate type of rebuild, not worth it in your circumstance. But let's go with Big Al again. We'll try to speed these up a little bit. We're almost at about half an hour right now and still have to get through like 6 more. So let's get these done. Try to finish in like 15 minutes. But either way, Big Al, 12 team super flex with some weighted PPR running back, wide receiver scoring settings. You guys can kind of see it on the screenshot there. But this is a top heavy team. This is a team that you're realistically not going to get much trade value for comparative to their on-field value in terms of their on-field production. Like, again, like your main cases here, maybe you want to flip NoodleOG, but at the same time, it's like, he's one of your best performing players and young. He's one of your only real tradable assets on your team. May as well just keep him. This is a team that, although it is shallow, as Big Al admits here, I'm probably just going to run it back. And if worse comes to worse and I have to trade that 2022 third and a small piece to get like an Adam Thielen to get me by, I would rather just kind of make that adjustment midseason.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smarter idea than trying to, because like I see questions like this a lot where people have a top heavy team and they're like, should I split DK Metcalf into Elijah Moore and Rashad Bateman and like take, I get 2 swings at the bat then, and then I get more depth that way. Again, when you secure a stud like you have a number of studs on your roster like Justin Herbert and DeAndre Swift and Najee Harris, it's splitting them into like worse assets is not usually something I'm willing to do. Yeah, like I would much rather fill out depth with my draft picks, as limited as his might be. Just try and, swing for the fences on that 3rd and those 4th round picks that you have. Maybe you get an Elijah Mitchell out of it. Maybe you get, any kind of wide receiver that can make a contribution for you out of it. But at the point that I'm currently at right now, like you do have some older pieces that could have some value in trades, depending on, if Will Fuller signs with Washington, for example, and Deshaun Watson gets traded to Washington, I'm sure you could trade Will Fuller at some point in that situation and maybe split him into draft picks and some young pieces potentially too. So you have some flexibility, but I would try and just incur as much depth as you possibly can, as cheap as you possibly can, via like really late round draft picks.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you there. And there's really not too much I can say here other than hope you hit on some of those picks to ultimately give you depth. But we got our next team here. That's going to be from MikeyB, a 12-team full PPR Superflex. And you guys can kind of see the roster, but the main takeaway, obviously, in this Superflex, main assets you got here are Lance, Taylor, Akers, Dobbins, and Elijah Moore, in my opinion, in terms of players. And then, obviously, again, you have the 103, 203, 303, and 403 slated this year. So what are your initial thoughts when looking at this team? And the main question he has is, should I trade a guy like Keenan Allen for picks?
Yeah. Is this a super flex league? It is a super flex league.
Yes.
So the quarterbacks make me a little nervous for sure, because you got have Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, and they're on the same team right now. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is probably going to have a starting job next year somewhere. I don't know where it's going to be, but I think he probably will be a starting quarterback yet again. Taysom Hill, of course, obviously could have a starting job at some point again in his career, whether it's next year with the Saints or whatever too. But Baker Mayfield is my QB2. Like, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you had a young piece like Fields, or even just like a Ryan Tannehill type of quarterback as your second QB. Your running backs are what would carry your team, though. Like, just looking at your starting roster, is you're going to get carried by your running backs: Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins. When they're on the field, obviously they would be carrying your team. He also asked, should I trade Keenan Allen for picks? This team is really in limbo, honestly. Like, this is truly probably the most
middling team.
Yeah, it's like a middling team. It's really hard to determine whether you should, go into next season and trade away Keenan Allen coming into the season and try and get younger. You have the 103 this year, obviously. So you could add, a high ceiling receiver like a Garrett Wilson, or a running back like Isaiah Spiller or something like that. Maybe a quarterback emerges and you can add a Matt Corral to your team or something. I personally would, this is like a wait and see team for me. In 2022, if I get to the trade deadline and I'm 4-6 or something like that, at that point, I'm probably trading Keenan Allen. I'm probably trading, Cortland Sutton or Kenny Golladay, whoever people are valuing at that point in time. And then I'm rebuilding from there. From this point on, I'm probably going to see what I have in 2022.
The only move I would possibly say is, you got Keenan Allen, obviously an older player now. He should age gracefully given the style of play he has. But, man, like, Rashad Bateman should be similar value to Allen. And I would, with this current construction you have, with obviously the younger assets, obviously the main pieces you have, Taylor 22, Akers 22, Dobbins 22, Lance 21, Elijah Moore 21, rookie picks. Like,
I still think this team is competable, though. Like, that's the only reason I don't want to do it now. I think Keenan Allen, one, as a veteran, has higher value in season anyway. And two, you'll know whether or not you can compete. Because if a couple things break right and Trey Lance is a top 10 quarterback, a la Jalen Hurts next year, Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins are good enough, if they're at their ceilings, to carry the team. So I'm okay waiting and seeing how your team is performing before you make any moves, because I don't think it serves you to just say, you know what, I can't compete. I'm going to trade Keenan Allen right now, because I think you'd get more for him in season anyway.
Yep. No, I feel you. So overall, there's not really much else I have to add here. In terms of your rookie picks, honestly, this is a type of team, especially in a super flex, you just take best player available. Again, could you maybe, like, say, for instance, at the 203, a following starting quarterback falls to you? That's probably where I would look at the quarterback. Maybe, I don't know, say Carson Strong gets early day 2 capital, or Sam Howell gets late first round capital, and they end up falling to the start of the second round. That's where I would look to add a quarterback if you were thinking at all. 103, I would just slate for best player available, whether it's, again, Treylon Burks lands in a really good spot, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller. Pick your flavor, pick your best player out of that bunch, but that's where I would be looking at that first round pick. The second round pick is where I'd be more open to, maybe adding another locked and loaded quarterback asset.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So we can go on to the next team here. That's going to be from Dirtbagodito's team. He has a 12-team Superflex tiered PPR team with 6-point passing touchdowns and a 0.25 point per carry. So you guys can see the team on the screen. And he basically said that he thought he was a contender because of the deep RB corps this team has, but the injury to Derrick Henry and the super thin depth at wide receiver was ultimately his downfall. He just kind of wants to say, like, how can I rebound with this team, and how can I make maybe a push at the championship? Because, I mean, the RB core looks pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, my pretty immediate thought is that I'm probably going to shop a running back.
Yeah,
on
I
this team.
agree.
Most likely
Aaron
Aaron
Jones.
Jones is probably the guy I'm
Yep.
looking to shop, just because I don't know what, keep trade cut or, whatever source or resource you want to use has Aaron Jones appropriate value in terms of a wide receiver, but you probably should be able to get a decent wide receiver, whether it's a veteran like Mike Evans, for example, for Aaron Jones, or you want to go after somebody a little bit younger who can ascend like an Ayuk or something like that. I'd be curious to know what you can get for Aaron Jones. And obviously you can add picks into that as well.
He's currently valued at the 110 in terms of rookie picks. Let me just take a look at what that would basically equate to in terms of wide receiver rankings, but that shouldn't leave you too far off like the fringe top 20 wide receivers. Like if I look here again, like similar value type of player in that range would be Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, Rashad Bateman, Marquise Brown. I mean, you have Marquise Brown, but like that would be an interesting name. I mean, you could probably get Michael Thomas plus for Aaron Jones, and that'd be
Calvin
maybe
Ridley was the other name that I was thinking 110 might be a good enough value for that. But that's probably what I'd be looking to do in terms of like trades. As far as your 106 is concerned, which is where he picks in the draft.
BPA.
It's BPA, most likely a wide receiver. Given your current team and the class's strengths in this year's draft class. And again, Derrick Henry is just such an interesting case of what we're going to do with him, because part of me wants to say sell Derrick Henry because he's at a peak point in time where his value is pretty high and he has a lot of career touches under his belt. But another part of me thinks that Derrick Henry's value in terms of how you want to deploy him in Dynasty is just ride him till the wheels fall off, because I also do think that could be the best course of action for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, like realistically here, like would you be at all shocked if, because of your market, because of what everybody hears about Derrick Henry, that like realistically people might even prefer Aaron Jones, because people are just going to hear all offseason, oh, Derrick Henry's hurt, Derrick Henry's old, yada, yada, yada. Like they're probably going to have comparable value. And at that point, I would at least take the upside of Henry. So in terms of comparative value to Henry, like you're mentioning like Nick Chubb and stuff like that, at that point, just keep Henry.
Yeah, I agree. Because if he is on the field, obviously, you can make a championship push with this team. So it's way more valuable for you to just have Derrick Henry in a point per carry league, no less. Like, Derrick Henry's got to have some value for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So again, overall thoughts, not much here. Again, maybe a quarterback 3 you can target, like a Jimmy G type for super cheap. Maybe you want somebody super high on Josh Palmer, and you could float, Josh Palmer in a future 3rd and get like a Jimmy G. I wouldn't be opposed to making that type of move. But aside from that, I think, again, just try to stock up that wide receiver core and look to move maybe Aaron Jones to do so. So we can move on to the next team. That's going to be from Brycen, a 10-team Superflex full PPR tight end premium league. And you guys can see the team on the screen. His question that he has is aging assets to consider acquiring, any players I consider shipping out. So basically why he's asking for aging assets to consider acquiring is, you guys see the team on the screen. This is an absolute juggernaut of a team. Obviously, the main quarterbacks here for next year, L. Jackson. Again, we're both high on Fields with his dual threat capability, maybe a Jalen Hurts level sophomore campaign. Running back Swift, Barkley, Gibson, receivers Jay Jets, Higgins. A lot. Like this team's phenomenal. No real picks to make a notable name, to say the least, in 2022, but he has all of his picks in 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, I'm looking at this team. I'm kind of interested in potentially trimming some of my depth to get an upgrade at a starting position. Yeah. So obviously in this league, you can start up to 5 wide receivers or up to 4 running backs, given that it's a 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex. I wouldn't hate the idea of taking, a Nick Chubb, for example, and taking a Cortland Sutton and packaging both of those players together and going after, DK Metcalf or somebody like a little bit of a higher value long-term that gives your starting roster, a 3 stack of wideouts like Jefferson, Higgins, and Metcalf for the long term. That would make it just truly, truly scary, because I think you have adequate depth both at running back and at wide receiver to be able to handle a move like that. Or maybe you want to throw in a tight end or something like that, or one of your future picks into a trade like that to try and upgrade one of your starting spots. But that's really the only move that stands out to me, because I do think this team as it stands right now is capable of competing. But certain players on this team, I just do think they don't have as high ceilings as maybe some people think, like a Cortland Sutton, for example. So he's a guy that I wouldn't mind shopping for sure.
The other guy that completely screams out to me is Nick Chubb in terms of comparable values in terms of keep trade cut. I mentioned Derrick Henry has basically the exact same value as Nick Chubb right now. I'd rather, if I'm going to make a win now push, go for Derrick Henry than Nick Chubb. Deontay Johnson is a name that really screams out to me, that has basically almost equal value with Nick Chubb. And at that point, give me the young superstar ascending receiver that could see a quarterback upgrade this offseason over a guy that realistically, is an older going on 26, 27-year-old running back with Nick Chubb, over 1,000 career touches. Just let me replenish that into an ascending receiver rather than the older, limited running back that Chubb is.
Yeah, especially in a full PPR too.
Yeah.
You definitely have more value out of a guy like Johnson than you do out of Chubb. But yeah, overall, I think you're in a great spot. You can compete with this team, obviously. So let's move on to Lumber's team. Only got a couple more here. We'll try and speed through these as quickly as possible.
More. We got Lumber's team here. He's got a 10-man super flex full PPR league. You guys can see the team. Questions. Overall thoughts on the team. What are the things I should focus on this offseason? And what should I draft to improve my team and compete for a ship for next year? So let's look at this team overall. I mean, you got the rookie picks here because I was about to say I'm like compete for a ship next year. That I think there's some work. But again, I saw the rookie picks 101, 106, 108, 201, 204, 208. So yeah, you are absolutely stocked up there. This is not a team I'm just going to force into contention next year because again, a lot of your younger assets are probably going to be more in line to peak 2023, 2024 rather than 2022 in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Plus, you do have a lot of question marks at running back. And like, even if everything broke right for you, it would still be pretty hard to compete with the running backs you have. Because if everything breaks right, Cam Akers is the top 5 running back, right?
Yeah.
In his highest case scenario, AJ Dillon, everything breaks right. Could Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon both finish as like top 15 running backs next year if Aaron Rodgers is back? Sure.
Maybe.
But I don't think, unless, obviously if Aaron Jones gets injured, maybe he's higher than that. But you don't want to be relying on that going into the season. Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, Zach Moss, some of these guys have, some cause for, hope going into the future, but your running back core is definitely needing work. You could for sure address that with the 106 or the 108 or something in this year's class and potentially make a push. But again, this is similar to what I said about the other team earlier, is this is kind of like a house money team for me. I'm just replenishing with best player available in the draft. And, if I compete, I compete. If I don't, I go to 2023.
And the one funny thing I noticed here is you have so much draft capital, yet you're basically set at the quarterback position, especially with those top 3. And then, as added insurance, if you will, maybe Baker Mayfield gets into a better spot than Cleveland, but your quarterbacks are set and you have so much draft capital. This is the definition of either taking best player on the board
and you have picks too at tight end. So you don't need a tight end.
So you are completely set up here to really make this thing an anchored top team in your league. I would say, again, like not 2022, but 2023, 2024, when everybody's value and peak sort of align. Like this is going to be a pretty unbeatable team. So it's not much I would really focus this offseason other than the fact that, again, I'm not attached to really any single player at any single one of those rookie picks regardless. And if somebody's willing to offer you an absolute godfather and, offers, for example, for 101, offers you 2023 first because they really want Treylon Burks or they really need a quarterback and want Matt Corral or something like that. Like those are the type of offers you can engage in because you own a monopoly on the draft picks.
Right. And I think potentially acquiring an elite superstar wide receiver might be something I look to do. If you can take like Devontae Smith and Cortland Sutton and go after AJ Brown or something like that, I'm okay making a move like that to secure a superstar wide receiver. But again, I think you're going to get one at 101 with Treylon Burks. So that's most likely the direction I'm going with that team. But yeah, nonetheless, this is a don't rush it, embrace the rebuild, keep building through the draft. And obviously know at what point you need to push your chips in.
I quickly want to say it's funny you mentioned that because I literally just typed in Smith and Sutton, and AJ Brown is one of like the players to even trade with, along with Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, and DeAndre Swift. So yeah, like that just kind of goes to show you that you can pretty much manipulate this build pretty easily, especially with all the potential depth you can add with those rookie picks. But either way, you're in a good spot. Let's go on to the next team here. That's going to be from Gibby. He says he's a 2 quarterback half PPR league. And his questions are what potential trades he can make, what are his weak spots, and what should he target in his draft. So you guys see the team. I mean, the top of the team is just absolutely phenomenal with Prescott, Lance, Taylor, Gibson, Mitchell, Higgins, McLaurin. Like, yeah, this is a very, very good team. Obviously, the depth needs improvement, as you guys can kind of see there. But his overall basis, his overall, identity of this team is very strong. Not to mention that you're adding, again, 105, 106, 110, 207. Like, you could flip this around within a year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think you have a lot of space to add. I would say if he's asked what like his weak spots are, I would say wide receiver depth is probably the biggest weak spot of your team. And even your high-end wide receiver talent like T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, They're not, bad, obviously. They're all good assets, but you don't have a superstar, top 5 dynasty wide receiver. So
that's fair.
That's really the only standout thing, because you obviously have Jonathan Taylor and Gibson at running back, who are standout top 5, top 8 at minimum at their position. So with that 105, 106, 110, again, you're probably looking at wide receivers, just given the strength of this draft class, and you also need them given the weak spots of your roster too. So I'd probably just be looking to replenish the wide receiver core with those picks. And, who knows, maybe you get a Garrett Wilson at 105 and he turns into the next, AJ Brown type of asset or something.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. There's not really much I'd touch here, and just
you could also you mentioned Stephon Diggs. You could potentially float that 105 for Stephon Diggs too, if you wanted to see if someone's willing to take a move like that.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. So overall, again, you're in a very good position. I think this is a very, very quick turn. Not to mention, I mean, you got 2 picks as well in 2023. So very encouraging future, to say the least. And again, I think this team can compete as soon as 2022 if Lance is a starter in San Fran. He's a top 10 quarterback. You got Dak, you got the overall running back 1 with Jonathan Taylor. T. Higgins was literally a wide receiver 1 this year in points per game. And we know that connection he has with Burrow is legit. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can break right with this team, in addition to the picks you can add to it this offseason. So let's get into the final team. Again, you know what you're doing here. That's a very well-constructed roster. Let's go on to NoodleOG's team, a 10-team Superflex full PPR draft, or a team with a half tight end premium. So overall, what are your initial thoughts on this team? And then I can kind of get into his questions that he has here.
Yeah, I can go over the questions here real quick. He said this past season, he scored the most points in the league, but he finished in 4th place, such as fantasy,
Classic.
right? Our league is changing our rosters by adding a 3rd wide receiver spot. So they're, going from a 2 wide receiver start to a 3 wide receiver start. And they're also going from half to full PPR. So, and increasing their bench spots and their taxi spot as well. So depth, especially at wide receiver, going to be more important with an increasing bench and more starting positions. Yep. Looking at the roster and the starting, positions, obviously, it stands out as pretty clearly a very strong top 3 at wide receiver with Hill, Lamb, and Deebo Samuel. You have a pretty, solid group of veteran running backs, at least production wise. The only thing that makes me a little nervous about this team is that you do have a lot of assets that could reach a low point and decline if they were to suffer an injury. For example, let's say Joe Mixon next year, has a 5 to 7 game layoff because he had like a grade 2 hamstring pull or something. Then you have a lot of room for your roster to lose some value just because of that factor with Mixon, Eckler, and Hill specifically. But aside from that, you have adequate depth, especially at wide receiver with Calvin Ridley on IR and Bateman on your taxi squad and all these guys here. The only real concern I have is some of those running backs at the top, but you have also even some decent depth there with ETN on your IR.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. Again, although we have to be nitpicky because from a value standpoint, things can go wrong for, Mixon, Eckler, and Hill. Again, if there's a type of structured team where I'm willing to keep veterans that I expect to produce the most in fantasy, it would be this type of team. And again, I'm still more willing to shop Mixon because again, you're talking about a betting on a low efficient older running back that you could realistically flip for a guy of comparable value that's younger. Maybe you can even I'm not sure. How does the consensus view Mixon and Javonte in terms of
I think Mixon is the guy that stands out just because he had such a great year this year. You could probably flip him for the better running back than you could Eckler, even though Eckler had a great year as well. Just because Mixon's been a guy that everybody's been waiting for to do it for so long. I think Mixon's value is probably higher than Eckler's.
If I were to tell you right now, you could flip Mixon and we'll say Rondale Moore into Javonte Williams. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and we we have no idea how your league values players, so we have no idea if you can make a deal like that. But again, with Mixon's year this year, with how people view him, he's still not the oldest running back in the world. But again, we're concerned with the touch workload that he's seen in his career. So you could probably flip Mixon for a guy like Javonte Williams, or potentially after the draft, if you want to go after one of the rookie running backs or something like that, you could definitely do that. And like you said, because he doesn't have any first round picks the next 2 years, right? He doesn't have his 2023 first, second, or third, and he doesn't have his 2022 first or his 2022 third round pick. You're definitely probably just riding this one out, especially those veteran assets that we talked about, and trying to compete as quickly and as often as you can in the next couple of years, because a lot of your team is in their prime right now.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. No real other thoughts I have here. Again, this is obviously a very strong team. Just maybe see if you can, quote unquote, downgrade from Mixon and maybe flip him into a younger ascending talent like a Javonte Williams. But either way, again, if you guys have made it this far in the video, about 50 minutes in, a little longer than a lot of you are used to, make sure you leave a like on the video. It helps us a lot in terms of growing this channel out. Again, I think I've said this for the past month, but we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Currently just under 9K right now. So if you guys can, find this on your For You page, like it, hit that subscribe, then by all means, it'll help us out in terms of that algorithm. But with that being said, if we helped you guys out today, even if you're not included in this video, keep following around, keep joining that Discord, keep interacting with this community over here at FSE that are a bunch of fantasy football diehards. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoy a great weekend of postseason football. We are in the wild card weekend. This should be coming up on Friday. And if your team's in the playoffs, good luck to you, unless your team is the 49ers. But peace out, y'all. Enjoy your weekend.